Yeah, so Finland, and Brooke and I had a really good time there. I mean, the Finnish put on a really interesting conference, and I'm just going to, oops, can I get to this? Next slide.
Just you look up at the TV if you want, Paul.
Oh, it is working.
Here as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Sorry, look at the TV. At first I thought I was in a Bjork concert for the first couple of minutes. We had this amazing, and then we had a protest from about 100 countries, students from 100 countries, all beseeching us to basically lift our game in terms of sustainability and creating a circular economy. And this is the third of these conferences. So they started in Finland. I mean, the SITRA commenced them. Last year it was held in Tokyo. The next year it's going to be held in Canada, then back to Finland. I'd love to see us actually get the 2022 here in Australia. So that's one of our objectives. So give you an idea of scale, 2,200 people. My eyesight's not that great. 2,200 people, obviously a great percentage of them from Europe, but we had our biggest representation from Australia and New Zealand. There was over 20 of us, including government and a number of corporates. And of those 2,200, what was fascinating, because this is not an environmental movement. The circular economy is a community-wide movement. And if you look at the percentage of people that were there, 36% of those 2,200 were from the business community and 25% were from the public sector. So that's about 60% were from government and business. And that, I think, is actually very telling. These are the people that are saying this is a serious move, this is a serious idea, and we're all got to work together to achieve a circular economy. And I'll give you some reasons why later. 16 governments were represented. Unfortunately, we didn't have any national representation from Australia, but we had some state representatives, I think, from South Australia and Victoria, and most of the big economies. So again, that was really crucial. And this will give you some idea of some of the organisations that were speaking and attending. And again, you think of people like the World Bank, the European Investment Bank, the World Trade Organisation, the UN. You wouldn't normally see them, OECD, you wouldn't normally see them as organisations that are going to be pushing sustainability. But they've got divisions now within them which are about basically how the circular economy can be enabled. So not talked about, but how it can be enabled. And some of the papers that I saw on metrics, and I thought, my God, where has all this come from? And it's all literally come in the last 12 to 18 months. It has actually become a bit of a firestorm, I believe. And then look at some of the companies. Obviously, IKEA is one of the leaders in this space, but there were two companies from Australia, Rio Tinto and Wesfarmers. And the interesting conversation I had with the Rio Tinto representative is that they realise that primary resources are finite and that they've got to be in the secondary resources business, which is what the circular economy business is about. So even mining companies are getting the message. And I was talking to Dow Chemicals. I think it's the second biggest petroleum business in the world, but they're already looking at downstream helping in the mechanical processing and chemical recycling of polymers so they don't have to take any more oil out of the ground. So that's some of the highlights there. And BlackRock, not that no many people who know who BlackRock is, but that's the biggest asset manager in the world who have got a circular economy theme in their investment. Now, to give you an idea, their investment assets are under mandate are 10 trillion Australian, and they've actually got a research team on how they can apply that funding to a circular economy. So I'm going to play you, sorry, before I hit the button on that video, and I hope it does play, because otherwise I'm going to mime it. But in the opening ceremony, Brooke, you may recall there were 3 voices, and the 2 of them were government voices, and there were, yes, it was the World Bank, etc. Fairly impressive. But what really struck me is the company was prepared to go out and actually say, we're going to be fully circular, and in a relatively short period of time. And I'm thinking that is really a game changer. So I'm just going to play, this is just an excerpt of the video. The full video is actually linked on our Circular Economy Hub website, so you can see the lot, but this is just a very short excerpt. And
we have decided to transform IKEA into a fully circular business by 2030. Transforming into a circular business will affect everything we do, from how we design our products, how we execute our supply chain, to how we meet our customers all over the world. This means by 2030 that all IKEA products will have circular capabilities, and we will only use renewable and recycled materials. We will design our products from the very beginning to be repurposed, repaired, used, resold, or recycled in any other way. Already today, the IKEA products we have, 60% are made of renewable materials and 10% are recycled. We are investing and testing circular buyback programs with subscription and leasing models. And we are engaging with customers, governments, and partners to advance the transformations to a circular society. Our vision is to create a better everyday life for the many people. And to live up to this, we will and we must inspire changes in lifestyle and consumption. And we will not manage to do this alone. We don't have all the answers, but we have set a goal and we have a clear ambition, and we are committed to succeed.
Yeah, so he actually got a very big applause for that announcement. And I can't pronounce his name, but it's Torborn, I believe, Torborn. I had a quick chat to him, and what impressed me was with the fact that actually they don't know how to get there, but they realise we have to get there. So that's the most important thing. You have to realise that, first of all, you have to care enough to want to get to somewhere, and sometimes you just got to work it out as you go along. So, and just to show you that was just not all talk, they're actually now testing in 30 of their major markets a subscription model to furniture. Okay, so you could go from a lifestyle of being a student, subscribing to a certain level of furniture, move your way through to a family, downsize, and you'll never actually own a piece of furniture. And they'll take it back, repurpose it, release it, or eventually recycle it. So 30 countries, and it's both for the business and residential markets. So again, actual implementation, because the theme of the conference was scaling up. So I think 3 years ago it was basically, is circular economy a good idea? But people have already run with it and said, no, this is the way of the future. So this is really bad because I can't, oh yes, I can read them from over there. So they're not on screen, so I'm trying to read that tiny screen over there. For me, it's tiny anyway. So this is a big call. I long thought about these key learnings. I thought this is something that people are going to laugh about me probably in 10 years' time, because I did say this about cradle to cradle. Sort of, not quite as strongly as this, and it never caught on. So, but I think circular economy, you just got too many players that have said this is the way forward. It doesn't matter whether you're talking major international organisations or governments. You know, the Netherlands have committed to being a circular economy by 2050, for example. You don't make that sort of statement if you don't feel confident in its importance. So I think it will be the defining framework which will allow us to become a sustainable society, because the hardest thing when you look at sustainability is actually defining when are you sustainable. Well, if you've got a carbon neutral circular economy, you are sustainable. And I want you to just do this test for me, because I've been doing this test for the last couple of months, and as have other people at Planet Ark. Look, think of an environmental problem and then say, would it exist if we had a carbon neutral circular economy? So, for example, ocean plastics would not happen in a circular economy, because there's no such thing as waste. You wouldn't be wasting, you would actually be capturing those resources. So, and please, if you come up with any, email me, because I'm really fascinated to know if there are. The era of producer irresponsibility is over. I don't think anyone these days thinks, I'm going to put out a product and I'm just going to hope someone else is going to look after it at end of life. And you guys are a testimony. The fact you're in the room, Coca-Cola are doing, videos promoting their recycled content, and obviously working. That's an example of producer responsibility. So that is, I think, a key thing. And product stewardship is actually a key implementation tool of the circular economy. People taking responsibility for something they do, whether it be a product or a service.
Paul, can I just add something for there? I just think it's important too, and we've got Carl Warburton here from Federal Government, and I think it's just important when we talk about product stewardship, we talk about the visibility there is on that right now. Helen Lewis has been working with Carl and others in government to do the Product Stewardship Act review. In the recent election, there was funding and financial support for the promotion of product stewardship. So It is really much more than just words on a screen, and it is actually very tangible. There's tangible progress in both the policy space and in the resourcing and financial support for this work as well here in Australia, and I think it's important to call that out. Product stewardship's not a new concept, and Helen Lewis and I have been long advocates and fans, along with Lara Barclay and some others in this room, of this work, and it's been a challenge to make, to sometimes get that over, but I think, if you look at those things that are happening right now in the space here in Australia, including the policy changes, the financial support, even just in the last 12 months, the space for product stewardship is real, tangible and very alive.
Thanks, Brooke, and thanks for giving my voice a rest.
But that's okay, I thought you might need it.
So, metrics. Metrics are absolutely essential because we're not going to know whether we're circular until we can measure it. And there's been some really good work, and the metrics section of the conference was really well attended. There was about 100 people standing at the back in a 500-person room. Now, there's been some attempts already. We've got a circularity gap report for the world that says we're about 9% circular now. I spoke to some of the authors of that, and they said, look, is it 9, is it 19? It's not 90. And that's the problem. A lot of our data points are not adequate to really tell us that, but it's the best estimate we've got. So let's assume we're 10% circular. We've got to do that, multiply that by 10 times to get to 100%, which is our goal, obviously. Now, the interesting thing is there was a really good section on trade, because people say, oh, well, we don't need trade if we've got a circular economy. Well, you've got to trade the secondary resources as well, because there's no economies, or very few economies, that would be so self-sufficient that they could be fully circular by themselves. So the European Union, for example, is saying we're going to be circular together. It's like that's 28 countries, and there'll still be trade, between areas. So, trade is, and if you think of just villages in the old days, you had a village who, traded their surplus, even if they were a fairly circular village, they had to trade their surplus to get something that village didn't have as a resource from another village. And the final one is Australia, one other thing, they'll have to be certified. And when I mean certified, I don't mean FSC certified, I mean more in the sense that I got had an interesting chat with someone who said, imagine a world where people are substituting virgin resources for secondary resources, because there's a big price differential, because as people demand more secondary resources, there could be a situation a bit like with recycled timber being more expensive than virgin timber. So the fact you want to know that you're actually getting a genuine product, you actually are getting, when someone says it's 100% recycled, it has come from a recovered or recycled resource. So that's an important key learning. And the final one is, though we're a fair way behind the leaders, and the leaders are people like the Netherlands and Finland and China, in fact, but we're not that, if you look at the pack of countries, we're in that pack. There's a whole bunch of people who are, at this stage. And that's why I'm pleased to announce the National Circular Economy Hub, because that's designed to actually take us to a leadership position. By the way, can everyone hear me? Because okay, cool. So the National Circular Economy Hub, so what is that about? Well, some of you, and in fact I've had emails from a number of people, saw the announcement in May, where we've been given $1.6 million by the federal government to establish the National Circular Economy Hub. We haven't got that money in the bank yet, so I'll let you know when I have.
Carl's right there.
Okay. If you could just spread that along, please, Carl. But we know it's coming, so that's okay. And there's two elements to that. There's the hub and the marketplace, and I'll explain that briefly very shortly. But a few people have said, why Planet Ark? Well, we think we are ideally placed, a bit like APCO in this space, because we are a not-for-profit, we're national, we're non-political, and we're independent. So we can call it as we see it. We also have a lot of knowledge in this space, and I'll give you some examples on the next slide. Sure, we didn't call it circular economy when we started up cartridges for Planet Ark, but we used zero waste to landfill principles to actually create a program back in 2003 where, people were saying, you're crazy to have zero waste to landfill. In fact, I was one of those people saying we were crazy. And also we've got a very strong history of collaboration, and the circular economy is a collaboration effort. There's no doubt about it. Just as Torborg said in his speech, IKEA hasn't got all the answers either. You know, they've got their whole supply chain they have to engage. They have to engage their consumers. There'll be probably some government regulations that have to be changed for repurposing of materials and things like that. So it's really important to have that collaborative, and you've probably seen the results from the Australasian Recycling Label, the amazing collaboration between APCO and PREP Design to create the system which now you guys have run with and taken to the marketplace, which we're so proud of. So there's some examples of some of the circular economy programs, and one I'm going to focus on in the top right-hand corner, not that I'm trying to flog you recycled paper, but if you think what's one of the oldest recycled circular economy products that are on the market. So the first time a recycled paper was sold in Japan was 1972. In Australia, I believe it was in the early 1990s. And if I told you that, say, we're very good at capturing that resource, roughly 7 out of 10 sheets of office paper are captured, put your hand up if you think it's 7 out of 10 are bought back. 6 out of 10. 5 out of 10. 4 out of 10. 3 out of 10. Well, you're wrong. 2 out of 10. 1 out of 10. Yep, it's less than 1 out of 10 actually. But yeah. So that is an example of how tough this is going to be to create a circular economy, because even relatively simple things, you think people are putting their office paper, they can go to a mill. Craig's here from Australian Paper, you can tell all about the mill. They've spent 120 million on it, 120 million on this recycling plant, and yet on the demand side we're not getting that throughput. And that's really important. We can't have a circular economy if people are going, I'm happy to just give someone else my secondary resources, if no one's actually going to repurpose them. And that's what Coca-Cola's done, a great example of, you know, going to 100% recycled PET for that. That's going to drive a whole lot of improvements in the recycling system. So we need to do this right across the board. So first thing, you're going to go back tomorrow to your respective companies and say, why aren't we joining the circular economy and buying 100% recycled paper, aren't you? Yes?
Yes.
Cool, good on you. So the National Circular Economy Hub. So I'm just going to focus on the first two in this slide, because there's a much more detailed slide on the marketplace. So first of all, we've obviously got to get people really understanding, or knowing that the circular economy exists as a thought process, and then obviously getting them educated. And we've done some research which will be released very shortly, and we surveyed about 150 C-suites. And to be honest, in Australia, unless you're a subsidiary of a multinational, you generally don't have much of a deep knowledge in circular economy. You have, like, you've heard the term, but you actually don't know how you would apply it in your business. And that's very crucial. That's obviously the implementation. It's no great just having a buzzword if no one's going to be using it. So we're going to do that research every year, and hopefully that's just going to get better and better each year, because that's what we're going to be doing through the hub and through our collaboration partners, actually getting people not only inspired to care about it, but to be daring and sharing. So caring, daring and sharing is our CDS for circular economy. And daring is really, really important, because they're going to have to really look at reforming some of their businesses. As I said, IKEA going to a leasing system or a subscription system for furniture solves the problem of what happens with end of life, because that's where most of the damage of furniture occurs, end of life. You see it on all the street corners after someone moves house or whatever. So. And very quickly, it's going to be very much a collaboration spoke, whether it's within Australia or internationally. We've been talking to, obviously, Ellen Macarthur and SITRA, EU Commission on Circular Economy. So we obviously want to share our learnings, but we've got a lot to learn from them. And also being very connected with all the policies that are occurring both at federal and state level in Australia. So if you haven't commented on the Victorian policy, I think you've got till 5 o'clock tomorrow. But it's a survey. It's not like you have to answer a lot of questions, but I encourage you to do that, because we're not going to get great policies if people don't give great feedback. And I think, Carl, you'll agree with that with the product stewardship. Having those group meetings are so important for you guys. Okay, so who are we targeting? Well, we're targeting decision makers in business and government, and change makers, particularly in academia and business, because we would love to see circular economy actually built in as a subject into every business course, every design course. It has to be in every course that you can think of. You know, it's something that we have to actually have embedded into our thought processes. You know, you could have a medical course with circular economy into it, as far as I'm concerned. And then, obviously, the implementers. And the implementers are what the marketplace is about, because implementing is always the hardest part, as we always know, of any new idea. So this is a fairly common thing we get asked. And in fact, I think the gentleman who owns this factory is in our... John, are you here?
Oh, no, he's gone back to Brisbane. He had to dash off.
Okay, well...
Oh, no,
John.
he hasn't gone.
So this is your production manager asking me. I've forgotten his name, sorry. Donnie. He said, mate, what can I do with this? And what we're looking at is a whole bunch of HDPE, giant inkjet cartridges. I think they print the backs of shopper dockets. And then you're looking at offcuts of thermal imaging rolls with PVC wrap and then paper, which is BPA free, by the way. You know, that's a tough question to answer. And yet the waste levy's coming in, $75 a tonne in Queensland, which is important. That's going to add tens of thousands of dollars to the waste bill. What's the solution for it? And yet people come to us and say, oh, we can't get enough clean stream recycled material. And I know they're not matched one for one, but ultimately, I used to work in the finance world, that shows you've got a market failure. There is no marketplace for a lot of these things. And people even say, what is the price of secondary materials of of bricks, of mulch, or of PET plastic? And it's not a tradable market. And if you're going to convert an economy, if you can get the price of virgin resources, you've got to get the price of secondary resources as well. So the answer is the marketplace, and you can see where all the various waste streams, whether it's extraction stage, you know, from a mine or from a farm, all the way through to even at recycling plants, we have wastes generated from contamination, etc. So that's the idea, is to get all those players actually participating in a marketplace. Oops, I went too far. And so I'm just going to tell you some of the things, because we haven't built it yet, by the way, so we're looking for input, but this is some of the things it's going to do. It's going to allow matching buyers and sellers in waste resources and provide an end-to-end solution, very much like any procurement system would do. But to do that, it's got to be able to, you've got to have very good, clear material identification and specification. So there's that already starting to work. We met Joris in Brussels, didn't we? And he's working on the specifications for, I think, the 70 types of polyethylene there are in the market. I thought there was only one type, but there's 70 types. And each one of them, even in a recovered material, needs to have its specification set. So when you know you're buying number 34 or whatever, you'll know that it's the kind of material you need for your production process, whether it's making new packaging or making a new TV. You know? Obviously, transport and financial transactions, and very importantly, a trust rating, because like in anything, there'll be dodgy brothers. I've heard of people taking virgin timber, distressing it to make it look like recycled timber, and selling it because they can get 50% more for it. Justifies it. So it's got to have a trust rating, much like you'll see on eBay and all the other systems, but also a digital ledger, so we can track all the different elements, because it could go through, those materials could go through 10 hands, 20 hands, and could be going cross-border. So we have to have a digital ledger in there to ensure its integrity. Because if you're a brand owner and you're saying this is 70% recycled material, well, you want to know that that is true, don't you? And yet you don't go and buy that stuff. Your bottle manufacturer buys it, who gets it from a trader or whoever. And then it's obviously going to have a procurement system for finished goods, because at the other end, we're going to have all these wonderful policies in place, like we have with the target of 30% recycled content of packaging. Well, that's going to come across all types of materials. They're talking about that in Europe. So if you've got a budget of $100 million, you might have $30 million, if say it's 30%, $30 million, you've got to make sure it comes from recycled and recovered materials in your procurement of products and services. Well, how's the procurement manager got to do that? He's got to know I'm getting it from someone who's actually got it's a source which is trusted, that will allow that to happen. Nearly finished. So sponsor opportunities. Now, we've already got some sponsors of the Circular Economy Hub, and I want to acknowledge particularly Abigail from Keep Cup. Where are you, Abigail?
She's over there.
Hi, Abigail. So the first reusable cup in the world, I think, wasn't it? 10 years, a coffee cup, 10 years ago? Yeah. Well, you're You've aged very well, you know, because if you've been in 10 years in business. So Keep Cup, and not only have they got a reusable cup, now they're looking for the end-of-life solutions for those reusable cups, because the circular economy doesn't stop with reusability. What happens when that reusable product is no longer reusable? It's got to be then turned into a new product. And Planet Ark Power, our sister company, who is providing mass-scale solar solutions, and our first collaboration partner, APCO, which is really tough because, you know, Brooke is like, you take her on a road trip to Europe, she is really tough, high maintenance. Seriously, you know.
I'm horrible.
She makes you drink red wine all the time and go to really nice restaurants. Anyway.
Shocking.
So, and this is our front screen. You can actually, the site is live now as of 4 o'clock this afternoon. It's still a work in progress, obviously, but you can register your interest because there'll be lots of information coming out very shortly. And that's it.